Hello, everyone. Welcome to HFPod live on tour. I am Brian Brinkman from Osiris Media. I'm one of the producers here. I do a bunch of work here on HFPod as well as Undermine, 36 from the Vault, The Drop, The Ravine, a number of other shows. Really excited to be talking with y'all here. I have been hosting about half of these HFPod on tour sessions since summer 2021 tour began, but all of those shows I either listened to via a Mixler stream or watching the webcast. Last night was my first show of summer 2021. It was my first show in 733 days. It was really incredible to be back at my favorite venue to see Fish, Dick's Sporting Goods Park. I had a ton of friends in town with me to go and check out the show, really take it all in, just like that feeling that you forget. You know, it's such a cliche, but I felt it last night, right as the lights dropped, band walked on stage, first notes of 46 days. I was like, man, I am back. This is everything that we listen to shows for, discuss with people in between shows. It all just felt right coming back. So I'm really excited to be talking with you all here today about last night's show. We've got some really great guests that we're going to bring on to talk through the show and kind of break it down. Really excited for that. We're going to be talking to Jackson Richards, who I've been really excited to talk to for a really long time here, as well as Kevin Rigenberg, who is on Twitter at Queen City Jams. Jackson's on Twitter at Glide, or Glide, excuse me, Glide. So really excited to get into talking with all of them. Before we do that, I want to give you a quick rundown. This is brought to you, HFPod on Tour is brought to you by Shift Genuine Cannabis. We love you, Shift. Thank you so much for all you do to bring back. You brought back HFPod on tour, and tomorrow we're going to be doing our live show from the Shift tent on Shakedown Street. If you were at Dick's last night, you know that the Shift tent, it's got a big American flag flying from it. It's a big orange tent. It's right there in the middle of Shakedown Street. We're really excited to go live tomorrow afternoon, probably around 3:30, 4 o'clock. Today is the final day to enter for the Vegas contest giveaway that we are doing with Shift Genuine Cannabis. Enter today to win tickets to October 30th and 31st, plus hotel, plus $500 towards airfare. It's a pretty awesome contest, really awesome prize. Would encourage everyone to go to shiftcannabis.com before midnight tonight to enter. And I also wanted to give a shout out to our media partner, Jambase, who does so much for us from a promotional standpoint. We absolutely love the work that they do at Jambase. We're so thrilled to partner with them. One additional thing I just want to say about Shift Genuine Cannabis. You can go to Golden Meds, there, I believe the Peoria and Santa Fe locations today to pick up the Osiris strain. It's live, it's real, it's in person, it's awesome. Definitely go and check it out. So with that, we're going to jump into the show here. And I want to really quickly, I have a surprise guest for you all that I wanted to bring on. And I'm noticing here really before I do that, Jay's Famous Dogs. Thank you for the shout out here. I'm wearing my Brent shirt. It's Saturday. I feel like tonight, you know, we need the energy of Brent at Dick's tonight. We need it to be a silky Saturday night. So I'm stoked for it. I'm wearing this to channel the good vibes into the world. So as we get into the show here, before I bring on Jackson, I wanted to, I've got a really special guest here. One of my best friends is staying with me, Sam Timberg. You may know him on Twitter. He's a brilliant mind about wine. He is a brilliant mind about fish. I've seen so many fish shows with Sam, and last night was his 100th fish show. So I want to bring Sam on. Sam is live in studio. This is a special thing. Sam, how are you doing, my man?
I'm fantastic. It's great to have you or be in your house, in your studio, and to have shared my 100th show with you last night.
It was awesome to be there with you. We've seen so many great shows together. We saw Merriweather 15, Wrigley 2016, one of my favorite shows ever, 12/30/16. Sam and I were there together. Baker's Dozen shows, so on and so forth, so many Dick shows. So I was really stoked to be there. Sam, what was your first ever fish show?
First show 12/1/2003, the night before the 20th anniversary show in Boston. It was Albany, New York. Big snowstorm. I went alone and was immediately hooked. Incredible Wolfmans in the first set. Tweezer 2001, You Enjoy Myself. Second set opener, still as good as anything I've seen.
Yeah, it's an amazing show. It's one of those. One of my favorite things about Fish is the night before the night. You know, you have this like big anniversary, Halloween, New Year's type of thing, festival, and then the show before that is always just amazing. So really cool first show for you to experience. Um, what out of the 100 that you've seen, what would you say is your favorite Fish show you've ever seen?
It's such a tough one. But 12:30:18 is just legendary. 12:29:18, those two shows back to back was just like the most incredible 48 hours of music I've ever seen. But there's so many. Merriweather, Randall's still legendary. And then there's nothing like Dick's.
Nothing like Dick's. It's the best venue. Like Trey said last night, happy anniversary. We love Dick's. We looked across the room, said, "Do you love Dick's? Do you love Dick's?" I think we love Dick's. It's a great venue to be at. So last night was your 100th. What were your kind of just like quick impressions of your 100th show? Obviously, it's like an emotional accomplishment to get to that number in a lot of cases. But what were your thoughts on that being your 100th show?
It was to do it at Dick's is the best. It's we were with what 15, 20 people, and I mean the venue is as good as anything. The sounds different in Dick's, and the show was amazing. It was the first set Carini was out of control. The chalk dust was as good a chalk dust as I've seen, and that Randall's 3 is pretty incredible. So yeah, it was but just to be there with a ton of friends, like that's what it's about. It's at a certain point, like you've seen a lot of great shows, and then you just want to hang out with your friends. So that's what it was all about.
Yeah, that's a good point. You just want to be there with everyone, especially after what we went through this last year. It was really special to be there.
Yeah.
Well, well, awesome, man. Well, I'm really stoked for you to get 101 tonight here at Dick's Saturday night, and I'm excited to take it in with you.
Yeah, awesome. Next 100, we'll be there for your 100 soon.
There we go, man.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Have fun.
Yeah, man. All right, so we are going to go ahead here now. If you see Sam on lot, he is one of the greatest huggers before a Fish show. The dude just like has positive energy radiating out of his pores. So say hey to him, have him celebrate 101 tonight. We're going to bring on our next guest here, someone I've been wanting to talk to for a long, long time. Jackson, my dude, how are you?
Hey, Brian, good to see you, man. Good, excited to talk.
Yeah, buddy. How's it going? Where you're in Denver right now, right?
I am. I'm not super familiar with Denver, but I am in the Lower Highland area.
Beautiful.
Walking around. It's a beautiful day. I just feel like the vibe is just always right at Dick's. Dick's weekend. It's just always chill.
I brought a friend of mine who I see a lot of concerts with, but he had never seen Fish. I got him into Fish during the pandemic via dinner and a movie, and I brought him to the show last night, and just like being in the lot, that feeling of familiarity of just how relaxed the venue is, how kind all the people that work there are, how everyone who goes there just kind of seems to know how it rolls. You're absolutely right. There's a vibe there that like it felt so familiar, but like I needed it. It was my first time in 2 years experiencing it. So it's great.
And it's an annual tradition. So like, obviously there are some people who come for the first time every year, but for the most part we're experienced. This is only my second trip, but the staff is experienced, the fans are experienced. We know how it's done at this point.
Yeah. What was your other year of coming to Dick's?
I was there in 2015, right after Magnavall.
Oh, cool. Very nice.
Yeah.
That was a good run. I loved that. I really enjoyed the second set of the second night, and the third night had that really great disease and that amazing encore.
Yeah. It was awesome. And I'm surprised, because that was so much fun. I'm surprised it took me this many years to get back, but it just wasn't in the cards. But yeah, I mean, just one night in, already having a blast. I'm like so excited to get to lot and start, getting ready for tonight.
Yeah. Tell me, so, as you plan out, you're on the East Coast, correct? Are you in New York?
I'm in, yes, New Jersey, New York. Yes.
Okay. So you're in the New York region. So
yes.
You get a lot of shows that come through. You get the MSG shows every year when shows come through.
Yeah.
Tell me, as you were looking at the calendar for this upcoming tour, was Dick's 2020 on your travel list and then you just bumped it to 2021, or kind of what was the decision to come to Dick's this year?
2020 was not on our schedule at all. There was so much uncertainty about this year, so we weren't really sure when the first shows back were going to be, and some extra fields for Dick's just kind of like ended up being available to us, and we thought, okay, maybe these will be the first shows back, or maybe these will be the only shows we'd be able to get to. So we just kind of have made the plan, and it's all worked out. We have a great kind of group of friends here, and yeah, I'm just so glad we made the decision.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely well worth the trip every year. Well, let's dig into it. So I know you were on with RJ a couple weeks back for, I believe, one of the Atlantic City shows. Do I have that correct?
Right. Yep. I think it was the second night of AC.
Awesome. Were those your only other shows this year, or have you seen anything else outside of AC?
I was at Hershey as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've
So
seen
those
some
five.
good fish coming up to Dick's. Night 2 of Hershey was one of my favorite shows of
Me
the
too.
overall tour.
Still.
The Ruby Waves, like coming on the heels of a 20-minute Birds of a Feather, like they just connect immediately on that Ruby Waves. I absolutely love that. What were your thoughts about last night's show, coming off of now, 3 shows at the Gorge, 2 very strong shows at Shoreline? What were your biggest takeaways?
It seems I kind of feel like the first night of Dick's was more in line with the Shoreline kind of type of shows they've been playing over the course of this past week, rather than at the Gorge. The Gorge seemed to be more focused on some of the kind of slower or kind of more introspective song selections, which I think is great for the Gorge. I've done a few runs at the Gorge, and those kind of songs totally like hit differently there.
Sure.
So I think the setting was right for those types of shows, but maybe it didn't focus as much on like big jams. And then of course that all changed in Shoreline, and I felt like, in addition to the big jams at Shoreline, actually it was also like some of the older like bust outs as well. Although that's somewhat of a continuation from the Gorge as well. But yeah, I felt like last night was more of a continuation from the Shoreline style, where we had a few big jams, one in each set, and then some cool bust outs along the way as well.
Yeah, I was thinking, as the first set was rolling through, we got the first Timber of 4.0. We got the second foam of the tour, but they rarely seem to play foam these days. I was looking at just, the gap between performances. It averages around like 25 shows, going back at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Vultures we got, that's always fun to hear. Pebbles and Marbles, I was thrilled to hear. I saw you tweeted this morning that there's no reason that song shouldn't be in the rotation, and like the second it started, like it just sounds like Round Room era Fish, but it just sounds like a Fish song. I felt the same thing, like why is this not opening every 5 shows or like featured prominently in the second set? It's such a brilliant song. I was surprised to see. I hadn't seen it since Vegas 2004. It was only my 3rd Pebbles and Marbles ever, so I was pretty excited to get that. But yeah, kind of throwing out some bust outs while also playing some really big jams. It seems to be a formula that's working right now.
I know everyone loves bust outs, including myself, because they're part of Fish is like the collector sort of mentality where you want to collect the rare stuff, right? So I totally get that. I get amped for bust outs, but in many cases, I understand why some of the more rarely played songs are more rarely played, because I don't know, some in some cases they're not like the best songs. I don't know, like
sure,
like Fuck Your Face or something like that. Like it's great every once in a while, but like I'm not trying to hear that all the time. But like a song like Pebbles and Marbles, it's like it just fits so well into their sound. It's almost like a quintessential sound of Fish. And it baffles me why they don't play it more often.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It feels like one of those songs that also has like a lot of pliability within a set list. Like you could see it in an opener slot. You could see it midway through either set. You could see it close the second set. I mean, both versions I saw prior to this were in the second set, featured prominently in like a jamming position. Yeah, it's one of those songs I wish like, I wish at some point there'd be a performance that clicked, and it seems like it happens every so often where a song will kind of bounce around the rotation, be in, be out, and then I think just offhanded, back in 2009 they played this brilliant version of Get Back on the Train in Miami, and moving into 2010 it was like Back on the Train was featured every 3 or 4 shows, and when it was played, they played it with just like an added dose of energy, and it just added something to the show. And you would love for a song like Pebbles and Marbles that has composed sections, has really good lyrics, and a really cool jam at the end would do that as well.
Yeah, I think there's been a number of songs that have kind of had that sort of trajectory throughout Fish's career. Like another one would be like Split Open and Melt, where I think there's some like interviews where they say like it took a while in the early 90s for like the kind of deep melts for them like to click and understand how to do it. And then early in 3.0, they would play it somewhat frequently or not infrequently, but it was kind of like the same every single time. It wasn't necessarily like working perfectly. And then I feel like over the last several years, it's really kind of like given a piece of new life, and they're playing it a lot more frequently. So, I really hope that Pebbles and Marbles gets its day.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Split Open and Melt in that standpoint, because I was thinking about Split Open and Melt last night during parts of the Chalk Dust, parts of the Carini, both of which featured a little bit more like just straight Trey leads and really like kind of brilliant melodic jamming. But I was thinking about like the effect that a song like Split Open and Melt has had. And to your point, they played it a lot in early 3.0, but it kind of seemed like they were it was like the only moment in a show that they were purposefully being abrasive and terrifying to their audience in an era when like they really weren't going dark. But I don't know how much like their abilities or the effects that they were using really allowed the song to like fully blossom. And somewhere around 2018, it suddenly was like every version of Split Open and Melt could be the jam highlight of a show, possibly even a tour for someone. And that impact on their jamming now, where they're not really afraid to go from a blissful, uplifting segment of a jam into something that's a little bit more, like cacophonous and ambient and spacious, because they know inherently that they'll be able to find their way back to something that's blissful and melodic.
Yeah. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think, a song like that requires you to have like some sense of like reckless abandon. And I think in like, 2009, 10, 11, whatever, like, I don't think they were necessarily that comfortable at that point. And then, clearly they are now.
Yeah. And like pushing through it to find that space in some cases has led us to tie it back into last night. Like my personal take on the overall show, I felt it was a little bit up and down. I felt there was like, I don't know if like the set listing out the gates didn't necessarily work for me. Like I loved it when it turned into kind of the rarities in the later part of the set. Obviously loved the jams. Set 2 had some like up and down moments for me. But overall, when you step back and look at a show like that, like working their way through songs like Split Open and Melt and through difficult jam segments earlier on in 3.0 seem to have paid their dividends here in 2021, where you have a show that from my ears had some up and down moments, but like they really connected on Carini and Chalk Dust in a way that would have been unheard of even 6 or 7 years ago.
For sure. Yeah.
What? Go ahead.
No, nothing to add. Just completely agree.
What were your thoughts? Let's hover on the two jam vehicles. Carini ended set 1. It was the first 20+ minute jam in set 1 since the November 2nd, 2018 Mercury. It reminded me a lot of the Magnaball Bathtub Gin, just in terms of the placement, the shock value. It reminded me of the Fuck Your Face show, Undermined, just in terms of like, this is how you end a first set, and like you walk off stage at Dick's on a Friday night in just celebratory fashion. And then midway through set 2, we got this stunning Chalk Dust Torture that, to me, it felt like the most effortless, like a pitcher throwing a no-hitter who just knows in the 6th and 7th inning that everything he's throwing is just like nobody has a chance. Trey just seemed so confident at that moment. What were your thoughts on those two jams? Like compare and contrast them for me.
Yeah. They were different for sure. So in Carini, I was looking at my watch, when they started Carini, and I was like, it's already been a long set at this point. So I was thinking, okay, like they'll probably do a set closing Carini, which it's not. I guess that was the first one ever, so it's a first time thing. But I was thinking, okay, like this makes sense. They'll probably do a short Carini and just like bring it up to like a big like peak to kind of like close the set on a high note. And then another minute went by and another minute went by and another minute went by, and it was like, okay, they're like definitely like taking this for a walk. And it was cool. It was more like of a dancey, groovy jam where like it almost kind of had a steady beat the whole time. They kind of kept going back and forth between minor key jamming and the more blissful major key jamming. Anytime they would go dark for a second, they would like almost like immediately pull it back to the major key stuff, which was really cool. And then it all culminated in Trey introducing this really beautiful progression. I'm sure we've heard this progression in other jams in the past, but it just really beautiful chord progression, and Trey was just like nailing the lead lines after he introduced it, just really nailing the lead lines and just like soaring over it to a big peak. And I'm definitely not someone who needs to hear like a really big peak in a jam every single time.
Sure.
Sometimes I feel like if a peak feels inevitable, it just kind of it doesn't hit as hard.
Totally agree.
But last night in Carini, like it just was perfect. It was
Yeah.
really nice. I loved that jam from start to finish.
I did too, and I re-listened to it before we talked because, you know, it was one of those things. Like, I've been watching all of these on a webcast, and like you can tell immediately, okay, the band's super locked in. This sounds really great. And, like, you can really enjoy it. But like being in there and watching, like, when Kuroda would just isolate lights on stage, and like it was super dark in the rest of the venue, and like it's set one, but it feels like the middle of the second set. It's such like a disorienting moment, and I absolutely love that sort of stuff. Like, that's part of the reason I chase like a first set jam is to, what time of night is it? Oh my God, we still have like half of the show left, and I felt that. And then re-listening to it, there's a moment around 13 minutes where they lock into this just like atonal, just rhythmic groove. And it took me right back to being there, and just, I was completely focused on what the band was doing. And then somehow, and they're so good at this right now, their modulations are so quick. They can go, just from dark to light to like heavy back to blissful in just like, 2.5 minutes type of thing. And something that would have taken them a lot longer 20 years ago. And I agree with you, as they were building towards the peak, my immediate thought was, this feels like an earned peak. It doesn't feel like, all right, we're getting close to, we need to go off stage, so let's just go into the key of D, send it off with a few bars, everybody throws their glow sticks, the lights flash, and then we walk off the stage. It felt like there was a lot of patience there. And to me, it felt like they had injected a ton of energy into the show, and then also discovered a musical space that they had discovered in the Soul Planet, in the Tweezer, both from Shoreline, in the Camel Walk, where if they just step back and listen to each other, they know that something great is going to happen. And hearing that version of Carini close out set one, it felt so celebratory and so well earned.
Yeah, the set break and the rest of the shows like tend to take on a different vibe when the first set crushes. And like, all around me after that Carini, people were like hugging and, giving high fives, or like, a few people like shaking their head in disbelief. And it just makes the 30-minute wait for set two that much more fun.
Yeah, I turned to my buddy whose first show was last night, and I was like during set break, I said, so that Carini jam, that is why we keep doing this over and over and over again. That's why I've done this 75 times and will continue doing it for as long as as long as Fish is playing.
Yep.
What were your thoughts on the Chalk Dust in set two?
Yeah. So the Chalk Dust was almost like the other thing I was talking about, right? Where a jam doesn't need to have a big peak to feel like it's a, like fulfilling and really deep jam. And Chalk Dust, if I remember correctly, it didn't have like a big peak or anything like that. It was just like 20 minutes of just like morphing between like different rhythmic sections, and Trey coming in with like, different lead lines and going back to rhythm, and just, phasing in different effects and things like that to give it a little bit of different texture as it went through. And it was just one of those kind of like classic jams that we've got over the last few years, where it just kind of like constantly morphs between different movements. But it just felt like a really polished version one of those. Like you said a minute ago, like it just seems so effortless at this point. And I'll say, one thing I did notice about last night's show, and it was evidence in the chalk dust for sure, is that Trey's feeling really comfortable, I think, with his lead playing right now. And he's kind of playing a lot of lead guitar like in the jams, but not with the sense of like building it up to a peak. It's just he's playing melodies throughout the jams. And there was a lot of that in the tweezer the other night. In Shoreline. And I love that. It's a kind of like classic Fish thing that hasn't been very present in the last few years. A lot of jams, and I love these jams, but a lot of jams have been more like cool rhythmic stuff, and then lead comes in and it takes it to a peak. But for the last few shows, there's been some really cool melodic playing from Trey and Paige as well, where it's taking it from one section to another, but they're not in any rush to build to a peak.
Yeah, there's a moment, it's like 24 or 25 minutes into the Shoreline tweezer, where on the webcast, the camera was just locked on Trey from the pit, and he just was going, it was, 90 seconds of this riff that he just made up, and he didn't miss a single note. And behind him, Gordo's got a great beat going down. Paige is just coloring over the top, and you could just see his head bobbing and this like shit-eating grin just spread across his face.
Yeah.
I was watching it with my friends and my wife, and we were all like, this is some of the most locked in we've ever seen Trey. He's not peaking. He's just like, he created a riff in his head, and he's hitting every single note.
They're just flowing.
Yeah, and there's like a satisfaction in hearing that like, I agree with you, like beyond an aggressive peak with the white lights, like I want that. Like that's the creativity from Trey that we heard in 94, 95, 97, 98, where like he could just come up with a line out of nowhere and it feels like a pre-written song inserted into a jam.
Yep. No, it was great and talked to us last night. I love those styles of jams, and I hope for more.
There was a moment where there was like a light from Kuroda on Trey from behind, and like I could just see like Trey's silhouette essentially. It was right when they were coming out of the chalk dust proper song, right where they could go to like the coda jam to end it, and he just came in with this like disoriented riff, and he was just like, there was no movement. He was just like standing there playing, and like from my vantage point, it was just like, this guy knows that he can play right now, and he knows that they're playing a song in this venue that is famous for chalk dust tortures throughout the years. And this is like a huge moment in both this show and most likely this overall run. And he just felt like he was elevated at that point and just like took them into a jam with no second thought. It was great.
I actually felt very similarly about the Hershey shows. I know the first night, people dig on a little bit because of some of the weird setlist choices in the second set, but both nights I thought that like they just sounded really tight and solid, regardless of whether you like loved the show or loved the jams or the song selection. It just felt like everything they were playing, they were nailing. And it just had that, when they're doing that, it just feels like it's flowing. They're not thinking, and last night it just felt like that to me, almost start to finish. There's a few points where I felt they were a little bit disconnected, but we can get into that in a second.
Yeah. I mean, I felt, there were some interesting set list choices here coming in set 2 because, in some cases they've played a lot of quote big songs over the last few shows, especially at Shoreline. Shoreline had like almost like a greatest hits feel that a lot of those songs ended up going in jams. Personally, I'm a huge fan of them inserting newer songs into big placements here, especially at like a big show like Dick's Friday Night. I thought a song I heard the Ocean sing had really cool moments. I've been chasing what seems like for eternity, but it's only really been 2 years, Beneath a Sea of Stars. And I really enjoyed last night's version. It got into some really interesting spaces. And, going out of the second set after that, they got a little goofy in a way that I felt like worked and kind of matched the kind of strange vibe of the overall show.
So I loved the first set start to finish. I mean, I was just beaming the entire time. So I thought the first set actually got better and better as it went on too. Obviously, it culminated in that big Carini. So I loved every second of the show through the first set. The second set started really rough, in my opinion. Honestly, like I'm
Yes.
fine with like Rise Come Together. It's a fine song. I like it. And actually, it could work as a set opener. You know, I thought it was going to be, and it almost was. You know, one of those shows that they've been doing recently where they open the second set with a shorter song and then go into the big jam. But they just kind of like were disconnected on the ending of it. And then they went into Song I Heard the Ocean Sing, which, like you said, had a few really cool minutes in there. But then, you know, there's a kind of what I would just consider like a ripcord right into Chalk Dust, right? It wasn't like a seamless transition. Trey just kind of like forced it in there. And at that point in the show, like you don't know that there's a 20-minute epic Chalk Dust that's about to transpire. So you're just, you know, kind of feeling like, ooh, they're a little disconnected here. But from that point on, like I thought it was just like smooth sailing, awesome playing from then on out.
Yeah, I would agree. I really enjoyed the back half of the second set, and I felt the same way. I'm personally not a fan of Rise. I'm hoping. I used to really dislike more, and then I was listening to it just in isolation, and the line, I guess it's never over, even when it's over. I think I'm quoting that right. I'm paraphrasing that. Really kind of hit me in a different way, and I was like, okay, I can actually appreciate this song for what like I interpret it as.
Yeah.
I have not gotten to that point with Rise. It feels like a very deceiving song to me in the sense that the first riff of it sounds so incredible, and then I realize what it is. I'm always like, oh my God, this riff, what is this? And then I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm right there with you. They have been doing this strange thing where they open up the second set with like evening song, more, Rise, and then they usually move into a jam. And I thought we were getting that with the Song I Heard the Ocean Sing. And it was one of those weird moments where like in person, I was like, this has to be like 12, 15 minutes. And then I looked back and I was like, no, the whole thing was 7 minutes. But then the Chalk Dust, from there, you go into Beneath the Sea of Stars, you go into Light, Plasma, back into Chalk Dust, Runaway Jim, and a really strong Slave to the Traffic Light to close things out. It was, I thought there was a lot of good flow towards the end of the second set in a way that was quite unexpected.
Yeah, agreed. Going back to the Song I Heard the Ocean Sing for a second. You know, I think we often hear Trey kind of like, you know, ripcord jams when he it kind of gets to a point where it feels like it's not going anywhere and just need to get out and try something new. But it felt jarring last night because I felt like a Song I Heard the Ocean Sing was still in like a really cool place. It was like in the middle of this really cool jam, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. It felt like, and I often wonder about this because, you know, and I'd be curious your opinion on this. There seems to be a perception that when Fish plays a really amazing jam, and I think the best example of this is the Soul Planet, where it's a song that I feel like the majority of the fan base is on one end about the song proper, and then a portion of the fan base is like, yeah, but most Soul Planets have been incredible and there have been amazing jams off of the song. There is like a perception that, well, if Fish can play a 47-minute version of Soul Planet, they can do this whenever. To me, I think it takes a lot more like connection, and I've got to imagine, like, I was enjoying a Song I Heard the Ocean Sing, but I've got to imagine there's something that Trey heard or Trey felt or someone else in the band felt and was just like, this isn't working. Let's go find some other song that this is working. Where do you fall on this? Like, do you think that this is something that the band can just do whenever and throw it out there and they're like holding it back for some reason? Or do you think that there's something more, you know, like mystical involved where like they have to be in the right moment and they keep the jam going just because in that moment?
I think it's probably somewhere in between. I mean, yes, Fish can do that whenever they want, right? Like they're master musicians. They've been playing together for, you know, almost 40 years at this point. Like they can go out and jam like for 40 minutes at any point. That doesn't mean it's going to be good. That doesn't mean it's going to be good, right? And I think, you know, I'm a musician and I've played like in bands that improvise and things like that. And like there's a huge difference between like jamming when like you feel like it's inspired and it's like feeling good and like feeling like, okay, we're just kind of like doing this just because like we're gonna like keep going and just to see or whatever, or like, you know, we're gonna just force it or whatever. So like I think they're at the point now where they just don't feel like they have to force it if it's not like, you know, usually like a jam, like culminates before it's 40 minutes, you know, and like I think they're
Right.
just ready to leave it behind at that point. And sometimes I think they just decide to push, or they still feel inspired, and so they keep going. But I don't think they give it too much thought ahead of time or anything like that.
Yeah, I that's a good point. And like they could just go out there and probably like open a show with a jam that lasts the entire set. But will it be
For sure.
up to the standards that they want to play? And I often wonder, like, are they trying to challenge themselves further? And if they feel like we're just falling back into a segment that felt like another jam, well, actually, let's try to find a different song where we can use this as a launch pad, because maybe this will open our minds up a little bit more in terms of like how to approach this.
I also think that like today's technology is a factor to an extent. Maybe not from the way that like Phish considers it, but I think from the fan experience, right? Like back in fall '97, we weren't listening to last night's show every single day. You know, like it took weeks often to hear the show if you weren't at the show, if not longer. And you know, a tour like that has like a distinct sound, right? Where so many jams night in and night out over the course of that tour kind of sound exactly the same in a great way, but they're just really exploring that sound. Today, you know, now that we can listen to the show, everyone can listen to every show in real time or immediately after. I think it's easy to grow tired of like one individual kind of sound that they might be exploring over the course of a tour if you're hearing it every single night. And you know, I think for them it's like if they jammed for 40 minutes every single night in one song, right? The jams would kind of start to feel a little bit similar over time. Like they're not going to invent like a new style of music every time they do like a 40-minute jam, you know? Like they're still going to like sound like Phish, and as amazing as they are and as versatile as they are, like they only have like a certain amount of like sounds. And yes, they evolve over time and they push the envelope and things like that. But I think we'd like start complaining about 40-minute jams if they started doing them every night.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think like there's something to be said about like if you go back to 94, 95, when they were really jamming out like 30, 40 minutes on a consistent basis, you know, you consistently heard the band try to find this like dark, distant space to challenge each other. But sometimes you just need one of those jams to get the point across of what was going on in that period in time. 97 is a great example as well, where like everything kind of fell into a funk groove jam. And to your point, like you listen back to that, there's some really great, brilliant moments within there, but there's a lot of this is the theme that we're going to explore on a night to night basis. And I think that they seem to be conscious of that. Last question for you. Tell me kind of your thoughts. I felt as though the end of the show, especially Runaway Jim, Slave, and Good Times, Bad Times, 3 classic old Phish songs that were played in a fairly standard, straightforward way, but seemed to have something added to it at the end of it. To me, feels like it bodes well going into this show, where like they played 3 big songs and they just added a little bit something to either the final jam segment or like Page's vocal solo and Good Times, Bad Times just absolutely ripped. What were your thoughts on those, and kind of how are you feeling going into next night too?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the song choice at the end of the show, in the encore, and also like the Jim and Slave and all that. I think when you've seen a lot of shows, you kind of get that feeling like, okay, when they're playing a show that's really good, and you get that awesome green and you get that chalk dust, and they're just like they're flowing, they sound really tight. You just kind of know like when they drop into like Slave or Good Times, Bad Times, and it's going to be an awesome version. Versus like a show where they like kind of like tack those songs on just to like, you know, close off an average show, or it's just going to be an average version. But so like, yeah, I agree. They had a little bit of extra energy. They sounded great, and I hope they can just, you know, keep it up for the rest of the weekend. Dick's Friday night is kind of a storied night every single year, you know, and oftentimes it's the best night of the run. Not always, of course. So I'm excited to see what they have in store for these next 2 nights.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, that's kind of my takeaway is like, I've seen, this is my 5th Dick's run, 2012, 2017, and 2018. The Friday night show absolutely blew me away. And it felt like, aside from 2012, it felt like the 2017 and 2018 runs suffered to a certain degree because the Friday night show was so good and nobody could really like, they couldn't match that. This felt like they were slowly building up. and got to a point by the end of the show where they felt really strong. And I'm curious to see. I'm really excited to see how that carries over.
Yeah, man, lots of songs still left on the table. They clearly have no problems repeating songs at this point, so I think everything's on the table. Can't wait.
Awesome, man. Well, I will be keeping an eye out for you on the lot. I'd love to see you in person and say, hey, this was awesome to chat with you, man. Thank you so much.
Can you remind me where you guys are gonna be on lot? Are you gonna be over at the shift tent at all or anything like that?
I'll be over there at some point today. We
Yeah.
park in lot G, just like directly west of the venue. So we'll be hanging out there, and I'll be kind of wandering over to towards the shift tent here later today.
Cool, man. Hope to see you. Good chatting.
Likewise, always good talking with you, man. And we'll do this again here soon.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, dude. We'll talk. Have a great day.
All right, you too. See ya.
All right, we're going to bring on our second guest here in one moment. We're going to be bringing on Kevin Rigenberg, who is on Twitter at Queen City Jams, one of my favorite accounts to follow. Before I do that, I want to give everyone a quick reminder here that HFPod on Tour is brought to you by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Today is your final day to enter to win tickets to Fish's October 30th and 31st shows in Las Vegas, as well as hotel and $500 towards airfare. You can do that until midnight here tonight. Please come and hang out with us at the Shift Genuine Cannabis tent tomorrow. We'll be going live around 3:30, 4 o'clock. Myself, RJ, Tom, Brad is going to be there, which is going to be awesome. We got some great guests, and we're going to be announcing the winner of the contest. Also want to give a huge shout out to our media partner, Jambase. We love what they do over at Jambase. They are absolute legends within the Jam Band media enterprise. They give us so much love, so much promotion, excellent tour recaps, excellent insights into all music news over at Jambase. All right, without further ado, I'm going to bring on someone I've been wanting to talk to for a long time as well. Kevin, my dude, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am so well. Thank you so much for hanging with us here on this fine Saturday
You bet.
morning.
Finally got it all gathered together. It's been it's pretty overwhelming last night, right? I mean, 2 years is a long time, and I, and I've been a big proponent of couch tour for years. My red couch right here, that I'm on right now. It's you get used to it, you get pretty spoiled, and being out there in real life was pretty damn fun.
Yeah, it's interesting you put it that way. I had a moment. I don't remember what song it was during, but I had a moment where I'd been dancing, I'd been having a great time. The sensory overload was just hitting me so hard, from the moment I got to my seats. But I kind of was like, dude, stop, just look around. You're standing in Dick's Sporting Goods Park right now. Fish is playing. Take yourself back 1 year when I was couch touring, when they were doing the old Dick shows on the Dinner and a Movie that weekend.
Yeah.
I was like, just remember, you've wanted to be here for 2 years and you're back. It's the best.
Absolutely. It's and you go right amongst people, and in your back there's everybody's got a different background, everybody's got different energies they're bringing, and yeah, it's a great experience of you got to be here now. And I went quickly from you got people around you and eventually it's there's chompers around you. We had people arguing about Yarmouth Road and Foam on the set list, and I'm like, folks, hey man, you're missing the point here. We can argue about the set list in 2 hours,
Right.
Come on, we're here. It's been 733 days, but I can try. I was easy to transcend that. And so that was, for me, that is because sometimes those things can, just bedevil me. Somebody gets talking and you hear them and they're just in you. And, that's part of the experience too. You gotta learn how to transcend that. Either you move around or you shift your energy. And it was pretty easy to do that last night. Most people, everybody around us was pretty dialed in for most of the whole show. So that was great.
Yeah, I felt like, and I'd be curious for you. For me, these are my first shows back since Dick's 2019. So first time in 2 years seeing Fish. I did not expect that coming out of Dick's 2019. It felt like there were a lot of people that made this trip or were from Colorado who these were their first Fish shows back since the pandemic. Where does this fall for you? Did you see any Fish
Nope.
earlier this tour? Or is these your first shows
Nope.
back?
these are mainly, I mainly just, these are my 3 shows that I do. This is I don't travel much anymore for them. So like, these are the 3 that, that I definitely want to be in person to in the home venue. And I love that, but once the live fish video came on, and you can couch tour and watch stuff from home. I watched like, almost every broadcast, I love that. Like, cause I remember there was a point in college in like the late 90s where I was like dreaming up that there would be a way to just watch the shows live, like the guy said earlier, talking about how long we used to have to wait for stuff. You'd hear Rubers and set lists and things, jams and things, and it'd take a couple of months to hear about it. And now we have such instantaneous access to it all.
Right.
Now it's almost like we're spoiled in a certain
Right.
sense, and it's like you try to just be really appreciative of that. Like I remember like wanting to have the ability to watch every show if I could. Like I watched every show of this tour. I don't think I've done that in a while. Like I know they did. I mean, Baker's Dozen had that, and I skipped one night of that, but I watched almost all of those too. And it's great, then the trouble is you got to remember when you get out back in the crowd again, it's, you're not in the home zone, and so you got to get, you got to work a little harder, but the payoff is a whole lot better too. And that's what last night was, man.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And, you just, for those who don't follow Kevin on Twitter at Queen City Jams, he's one of my favorite accounts to follow. You're part fish scholar, part music historian, part Denver music historian, and you strike me as a completist. Like you want to hear a full catalog of an artist, you want to hear a full tour of fish, and what you're talking about is like when I first got into fish in 2001. It was right around the time that Live Fish, like the first series, came out. But it was still at the tail end of the period where like I would go through set lists online and be like, okay, how much money do I have for postage this week and for blank CDs? Okay, these are the 6 shows that I need to get. And then I send it out to someone. 2 weeks later, I'm like checking the mail every day. And it's a totally different experience now, but it's also to, I think, someone like yourself and myself, like I have 2 small kids. Being at home on couch tour makes the most sense financially, just in terms of like family, home health, all that sort of stuff. But being able to experience like the Soul Planet from Shoreline, the second set from Hershey, the Deer Creek show alive with everyone who's there is something special. But then you walk back in and you get something like that Carini last night. And it just elevates that experience of both the shock value of, oh my God, they're playing Carini. Oh my God, they're jamming Carini. Okay, this is a really good jam. This is going to close the set. This is now an all-timer jam. It just, it elevates the entire experience in a really cool way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Carini jam came, that whole first set was starting to, I enjoyed everything and nothing seemed to get too sort of crazy. And my partner, she looked over at me and I think it was right after that awesome Pebbles and Marbles. I mean, I love to hear anything from Round Room. Big fan of that. And I was glad to hear that. And after that got over, she looked at me and she said, it's been like a really happy, joyous, warm, mellow kind of fun set. And I'm not kidding you. 1 second later, there's that distinctive strum of Carini. And we just looked at each other and we're like, wrong. And Carini always hits harder for me because I was there that night in Wisconsin with a dear friend of mine who I brought to his first fish show in Fall Tour 98, Cole Center in Wisconsin. And it was in the second set when during a Prince Caspian, the naked guy, I had watched him from the floor move his way through the crowd. And the show was it was great. It was good, but it wasn't anything, back in the days when there was 90 of them, you wouldn't be like, dude, you got to get this tape. But they're live. It was fun. And I saw this naked guy when he climbed up on stage and I feel like he hugs Trey briefly. And then Carini comes and grabs him and bear hugs him off the stage. Then the whole place just rose up after that whole rest of that. And like, it's like he took one for the team to like bring the second set to this like rise. And then it's like a few nights later, they played the Carini and they switched that line to I Saw You with the Naked Dude. Yeah. And if you go back and read that, what the original line of Carini was, it's a terrible line. And I'm always like, my buddy always said, my buddy Dan, he passed away a few years back, but he loved knowing he was there at that show. And man,
oh man,
gets me choked up a little bit. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, man, I get it. It's special, man. These are incredible memories.
Well, it's the sorry,
You're all good.
it's the emotional content that comes too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I
Sorry
mean,
about
I
that,
was
but
no, man. You're
no, and
good.
he was an older cat, and he was like a lifetime deadhead. So it was really neat that he was part of that show. And you always get that when you hear it; it stays with you, you know. And sorry, that's back on
No.
track. But like, you know, that emotional content's always in there too, and that's part of the experience. That when it's live, you don't necessarily get that on couch tour. I heard that Amazing Creanie the other night. That doesn't happen, but when it's live, you feel that happen, and you sense that connection. And you remember those shows and those friends you're with, you know, the number line, you know, and all that. And so that was great. After that, then it was just like we're playing with house money for me, you know, and it was just like, you know, then you can just sit back and enjoy all of the experience and all those lights. Oh, that's what we're talking about, right? Being there with those washing over you, like,
So I mean, to your point, like I remember Curveball was canceled a couple years ago, and then the next shows are dicks. And there was this like emotional heavy weight that came over those
oh
shows.
yeah,
And you never really know, like, is Fish gonna address it? Is this, is are they just gonna like pretend it never happened? And they come out and they play Free, and it's like, okay, the feeling I forgot. And that was kind of like a preview in some weird way for like what COVID would do to Fish. Where like, this was ripped
all right.
away from them. And then they play Harry Hood. And I had such a moment where like I was with some of my best friends and I'm watching this band that I've been following for 20 years, that I've seen so many shows with. I met my wife because of Fish, and I just like lost it. And I'm like standing there just like hugging people. And it's what you're talking about, like, being in that moment. It's this elevation of emotions, senses, and it brings up past memories. It brings up the people in our lives. It's why I'm, a huge fan of the song Show of Life. Like, there's a journey that we're all on, in a sense. There's an honest journey.
Yep.
There's like peaks and valleys to it all. And it's amazing how, like, you know, I don't know. We've been on this road with so many different people, and then you're here after 2 years where you can't see the band, where you can't go to a concert, in a lot of cases, and it just all
Right.
comes out. I'm right there with
Oh
you, man.
yeah.
I love it.
Oh yeah. And I love that. That's all part of that too.
I wanted to ask you, what was your first Fish show?
My first Fish show was fall '97. And I didn't know anybody that knew a single thing about Fish, but I had begun to hear something a previous year, something that was adjacent to the Grateful Dead. And I came to the Dead in '90 and didn't get a chance to see Jerry live, between the '90 to '95. But I was, I had developed quite an interest in it. And this was like something that's like, oh, this is kind of going on, and it's like the Dead too. And I remember I was living in Central Illinois, and there was back in the days when they used to do concert previews in the newspaper, like they would tell you about like the show from a week earlier. They did one of those for the fall '97 tour, and it was like still some tickets available. And so it was like it was like during the week, a weeknight, and I had a job where I had to work up. It's like 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, well, I'll just go over and see what's happening. I drove over there. I drove in a parked in that parking lot, and there it was. It was like, rolled right through a shakedown. Never seen anything like that before in my life. Roll into the box office. I don't know if you know what Assembly Hall in Champaign looks like, but it's like a UFO. Rolled into the box office, and they're like, we have one ticket left. Literally was in the top row of Assembly Hall. I'm like, great, I'm in. I walked in, and as soon as those lights went down, I was like, boom, I'm home. Wow, what is this?
Okay.
Didn't know anything, in the show, but I knew 2001. That was one thing. I'm like, hey, I know this. Wow. And I can remember I had to leave during the encore as they were playing Possum. And I remember just like leaving. I was going out through the halls, going out with just this song. And I'm just like, wow, what is this? Like, I got to learn more about this. Drove home and like get on the internet and learn about what all this stuff is, and I was just blown away. And the funniest thing is, it's like 2 years later, I was still in Central Illinois, big fish head by this time. I was working in a video store, and this young gal comes in and she just points at me and she goes, you. And I go, what? She goes, Assembly Hall 2 years ago. I remember you. And I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, fish. Because we were sitting there and people got all like crazy, and I helped like diffuse the scene for people who were being sort of weird or whatever.
Okay.
That was my first time there. I didn't know how to get weird yet. So, and she just remembered me, and I was always like, man, that's fishware. Like there's something about this, man. There's
Totally.
something a little different with the way we all process this sort of stuff. And so then from then on, my goal was I always saw at least I got to go see one show of every tour. I didn't get into, doing 2-3 weeks at a time, and I'd always go see one show. And so my next show after that is Maryland Heights, Riverport Gin, second show ever was that. And I remember we went to see, there was like Metallica was there the night before or after that. And I went with this buddy of mine that had never seen that stuff either. We might have been the only two people that saw Metallica and then Fish back-to-back nights. And I can just remember they come out and they played that 20-odd minute Bathtub Gin. And he just looked at me and he's like, what is happening? Everybody is into this. And I'm like, I just shrugged and I was like, I don't know. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. And so like, he loves that. That's his only Fish show he's ever seen. He's like, yeah, I saw that gin. So he gets to brag about that. And so then, then you bring people along the way. And, I mean, I even brought my brother to a show who's an airborne ranger, never seen any crap like that. He took his wife. He thought it was great. I think that was it might even been the Peyton Hooten show down in Lakewood sort of stuff. But yeah, and the tape trading, one thing I want to say about that was I remember when I was in college, I had a mailman who would come bring the tapes up. And sometimes he would come, he'd beat on the door and he'd be like, your drugs are here. And in a way he was right, because like waiting for those things to show up, those things were just, precious little gems. And I used to love to B&P for people like that. And you created a little scene that way. And I love how now it's online and we got so much access to, it's overwhelming. And like you said, you're right. I am a little bit of a completist and I like to hear all that stuff like that. And I just love the access we have to it now. Like, I don't ever want to be like, no, I don't want to see it, I'm just, I'm happy,
Well, tell me, like, full perspective, and obviously we have 2 more shows of this weekend. So like our perspectives on what last night's show meant versus like, we won't know until we walk out of the venue on Sunday and we can see this as a full 3-night run. Because there's always there's like an arc to these sorts of weekends. Mm-hmm. But when you look back at like your first show in 97 compared to where you're seeing them now, and as someone who's watching every webcast, going to a show every tour, which, it's funny. You and I can say like we're going to a show each tour. That's really not a lot for Fish, but like for any other band, that is insanity. Right. But with the amount you've seen, with the amount you've heard, what are your kind of big takeaways about where Fish is at the tail end of summer 2021 compared to when you were first seeing them in 97, 98? And what are your kind of compare and contrasting thoughts on that?
Well, that's a fascinating question. What I think is the thing that's been the biggest thing for me is how much the band is growing as like a unit, like as a dynamic, right? Like, cause in the late 90s when Trey is a big part of the band and he's so great. And at times it was like, he's the Jedi and he overwhelms the band. And for me, the soonest I learned early as a fan to listen to all the other 3 and pull back and enjoy that. That's when I learned that watching Trey is like ball watching when you watch European football, or like soccer or whatever. It's like, it's ball watching. It's great. And you're never going to go wrong. But once I learned and I listened to the interplay and I'd hear how ideas would go back and forth and stuff. And then I can fast forward to like how it was last night. Now they can do the same thing, but with just such a wider palette as well too. And it's so great. I mean, I really wish I could go back in 99 and let's play some of these tapes for myself, because I remember there was moments of things I wanted to be like more Leo or like get a little more crazy with the synths and stuff like that. And now when I hear that now, it's just like, it's paid off all these years later. Like this is now all part of the sound. And now in the sound, you can listen to the show. Like I was saying, you can hear like Carini and it reminds you of a certain era, or there's a loop gets thrown in every now and then. You're like, oh, that's like fall 99. It's like, there's little references and they're all part of who you are and part of that journey as well too. And and for me too, is I love all the new stuff too. Like I'm just always amped up for new songs. Like my Lord, we've had like 4 or 5 albums where they just new stuff, different palettes, different changes, you know. One thing I wanted to say when you guys were talking about the show with the ripcord into Chalk Dust, it hit me last night. I think Trey likes to do those things to challenge himself and the band when it's like when they're sort of playing with a little bit of house money, like that the jam that was coming in the a song I heard the Ocean sing was honestly could have went on forever, you know, like the point he made here, like they could have did that for 30 more minutes. It was a beautiful place, and then it slammed into that Chalk Dust, and I remember I looked at my partner and I'm like, I'm, you know, Chalk Dust, all right, this guy, and I said, you know what though, it feels like it'll get right back to that same place pretty quickly. So like it doesn't, and it's like, and Trey's going to love it even more that you're like, why did he go into Chalk Dust? And then we're all pumping our fists and we're into Chalk Dust and we've long forgotten it. And I'm like, now I see why some of those ripcords are just all about me, you know? And I was like, brilliant. Cause like, you know, I remember it was a few summers back. It seemed like everything was having ripcords and I was just like, man, they don't want to do the, and I'm like, we needed that to get to here. Okay, great. And those are the things that I treasure, is remembering those things and see now, you know, like I love all the MIDI effects and all the different stuff he does with his tones and his pedals. And sometimes they don't work out so well. I'm still rooting for them and I love them. And it's like now they're all fitting in together like this, like a puzzle with the way, you know, and it makes me so excited for everything that's coming up, you know. I mean, I think RJ said that they're playing the best they have. I kind of agree with that in a sense, because in fall of '97 we don't get to hear all the songs from the last 20 years, you know, and it would be pretty, you know, it's pretty special, you know. That's what I mean. I the progression of it I think is great. I mean, I don't know how others say it than that it's so enjoyable, you know, to see where they're going, you know, and where they can keep going from here. And each night there's always this potential again for, you know, more fun in a new direction, an old direction, or something we hadn't even thought of yet. So, you know, awesome.
No, there's so much you said there that, like, I mean, I feel like we could keep this going for another hour, just like based off of your answer there. Cause like, you know, to your point, you listen back to my personal favorite year of Phish is 1995. And to me, the combination of these just like wild, you know, atonal jams in the summer that somehow led to this melodic, aggressive funk in December that, to me, like when you put on any December show, that is when my brain thinks Phish, that's the sound I go to. You know, like the Haley's NICU Slave from 12/14/95. Like that is the sound I go to when I'm like Phish. But so much of that, and even going into 97, was so Trey led. And, you know, to your point, like I was listening to, I can't remember the exact moment. I think it was in Chalk Dust last night where Trey was playing a riff and he kind of backed off a little bit. And I was looking at the stage and Paige was on his Wurlitzer, and he's been loving the Wurlitzer all tour. And it adds just like this, like bubbly, beautiful background noise. And Trey started to back off a little bit, and almost like split second later, Paige hit his synths. And you just heard that like just like envelop the whole stage. And Trey then came in with a new line, and Fishman changed up what he was doing. And it was almost this moment of like, we have all these tools over 40 years of making music together. And part of those tools came from December 95, came from November 1997.
Absolutely.
You know, came from July 2003, came from Magnaball. And they're now able to say, and I think that this is like what you were saying, what RJ said about like, you know, is this the best we've heard of Phish? You know, it's so hard when there's so many different tones of Phish to say this is the best. No, wait, this is the best. No, wait, this. But like, I think that there is something to be said about like, they are taking collectively 40 years of musical knowledge and 40 years of conversations and 40 years of ideas, where 30 seconds of a jam could sound like it's from November 97. Another 30 seconds could sound like it's from the Round Room sessions. Another, you know, and they can just jump around these eras. And, you know, the other thought is like, it's no longer, Trey doesn't any longer need to be in the background. He can just like hold off for a bar and give page the opportunity to offer an idea, and then they're off on another race. And it's so satisfying to hear that. You get the friendship of the guys who like know each other, but also like their musical knowledge and their ability to just, pivot on a dime. I feel that as
Absolutely.
well. I'm right there with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the video feeds are so great about that too.
Yes.
To be able to see all that, like I love all that stuff, like the head gestures, and sometimes I get too wrapped up into it. It's like, what's going on? Is there tension here? And I'm like, you don't ever have that live at a show. And it's when I realized there's like four ways to appreciate a show live when you're there. You can listen to the soundboards now live. It gives you a different flavor. You can listen to an audience tape, you can also watch it live on the video, and then you're getting the feed where you're watching the guys on the stage, and you can see more of that. I mean, like, there are so many of these multiple ways we can appreciate these shows. It's like, I also thought last night too, some of the jams they're doing now seem so deep and rich with stuff. I'm not getting nearly enough out of them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting them on a surface level. And I know there's a lot of stuff here. And the analogy I use is like those big splatter paintings by Jackson Pollock, where there's all this stuff going on. But unless you go in front of one that's like 15 feet and stand there for like 10 minutes and just like relax your mind, you'll watch the different lines come out together and then go together, but separately. And I'm like, it's like my analogy for fish sometimes at these shows. When you're there, you can control which aspect, and it's like you're not going to go wrong with either lines you want, and you can mix and match. And I'm like, they'll be taking these apart, 100 years into the future and making all these different things from like 1 25-minute jam. Like, I feel there's that much level of complexity and richness in some of this stuff that where we're here getting it and it's just going over us because we got lights and there's all this stuff going on. We're not always getting everything out of these. Right. And that's what's so fascinating to me. I almost call it like, it's like a couch gaze music, like shoegaze meets the couch. It's such a deep, heady music, and a little bit of the first set, like I was a little like, kind of wish I was at home on the couch so I could really be enjoying these mellow jams. Like I said, then that Carini thing comes and I'm like, that's why we're here. This is what you could feel it. You feel Mike, you feel it. You got the lights and you're just like, oh, wow. Then, I can deal with any of the long waits for your wristband and all that other stuff. It's all worth it. Just smile and we'll all get in.
It's all worth it. Well, are you going to the next two shows?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
I think it was in 2015 is when I really got back hardcore into fish. I said, if Trey's going to spend all that time learning Jerry, there's no way 2015 won't be just like the greatest tour. And I said, we got to go to all the shows. And for some reason, we only went to 2 out of the 3 and missed the Friday show of 2015. And I think that was the Ghost. And I'm like, that's my favorite. It's my favorite fish song is Ghost. Ghost never goes wrong for me. And I was furious. And I'm like, we go to all 3 now, here on out. Because previous years we picked 1 or 2 and just go to 1 or 2 and stuff like that. But I'm like, now it's always 3. And like, people around the office know it's Dick's weekend for him. He's getting excited, taking some time out. Take the time off. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I always want to see where the whole 3 days are going to go. And being on the field, I'm usually in the stands. I'll go off into the wings where I can have more space and really focus on the music and miss out on some of the lights. And last night it was like, we wanted to be deep, like right in front of Kuroda, 10 feet away in front of him, getting all the lights, and
that's awesome.
And that's, I don't know if we'll go back there again because, 4 hours of standing up was getting a little difficult getting,
it gets a lot of after a while.
A lot of years from 97 on the knees. But no, we'll rally hard for that. No, But yeah, I have high hopes for enjoyment for the next couple of nights, and there's going to be that Mercury. I can feel it.
I feel a Mercury. I think that you're going to get a Ghost. We're primed for a Ghost as well. And I'm hoping for some great shows. I'm hoping that we can run into each other as well. I have one last question for you. This comes from one of our listeners, Mr. Jesus H. Schweiss. Brent or Pigpen?
Oh, that's a Sophie's choice. Who?
Don't let my shirt influence you.
Gun to my head, I have to go Pigpen. I'll have to go Pigpen. And he'd like it the fact that he'd like it with a gun to my head. I latched onto him real early on. And in the early '90s, you couldn't get much information about Pigpen. He was a mystical figure to me. And then he became my litmus test for deadheads. If they didn't know Pigpen, I didn't want to hang around with them and know what they had to say. They probably erase drums and space from their tapes,
Oh my God.
So yeah,
No.
Pigpen it is.
There it is. I love it. Well, I'm wearing the Brent shirt today. I don't know if this will make it in the
I
show.
love Brent too, though. We can run, baby.
We need a silky Saturday night, and we can run.
We'll have one.
The first ballad about climate change. I absolutely love that song.
I stand that song hard. I don't,
Me too. I absolutely love that song, and Blow Away, man. What a moment.
Yeah.
In every all those first sets. Well, Kevin, this was awesome to talk with you. Let's do this again here soon. I feel like we could just jump on here and just like dive deep into fish nerdery.
Oh, absolutely.
Go into Neil Young, go into Dylan, go into the Dead, go everywhere. I'd love to.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Have fun.
Yes, you as well. Have a great rest of your Saturday, and we'll hopefully see you here at the show.
See you.
All right, man. Peace. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Very long but awesome episode. I was so thankful to talk to Jackson and Kevin. Really great conversations. Thank you all for hanging with us and for listening and for commenting, all that sort of stuff. Before I go really quickly, one last reminder, HFPod on tour presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Go to shiftcannabis.com today. Register until I believe it's midnight tonight for tickets to Fish's October 30th and 31st shows at MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, plus hotel, plus $500 towards airfare. Huge! We are going to be on lot tomorrow live. Me, RJ, Tom, Brad, bunch of guests, music, loads of stuff. We'll be announcing the winner to that. Find us at the Shift Tent. Go buy the Shift Tent today. It's big, orange. It's right on Shakedown. It's an awesome, they're awesome dudes. Brian Welker, say hey to him. He's one of our favorite people here at Osiris. Would be really awesome for you to come and hang out with us tomorrow for the live show. As well as I want to give a shout out to our media partner, Jambase. You all should know Jambase if you are following us. Jambase is amazing. They are the leading website for music news in the jam band world. There's incredible stuff that comes out of Jambase. We absolutely love them. So thank you for all your love, support, and hard work for us at Jambase. With that, I will bid you all adieu. I'm going to go and hang out a little bit, get some lunch, get ready for night 2. I'll be on the lot around 3:30 today. If you see the RHS hat, say hey. I'd love to give you a high five, give you a hug, talk about last night's show in person, talk about whatever you want to talk about. Brian Eno, I'm happy to do that. The Silver Jews, I'm happy to do that. The war on drugs, whatever you want to talk about, I'm here, happy to talk. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Hope you enjoyed last night's show. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you here tonight. Thanks so much.